More than half of the world's population lives in cities, and not all of them look like we're used to. Today I'll show you cities that are hard to believe exist, and we'll start with a city on the edge of the Atlantic Ocean. Here, not far from Lagos, there used to be a tiny fishing village, and now it's part of Lagos, although it's actually a whole separate city, built on mounds of compressed garbage. Houses stand on stilts right above the water. One of the most unusual places in the world with extreme poverty. The world's largest slums built on water. This is not Venice. It's like a post-apocalypse picture. No one knows exactly how many people live here. Some say hundreds of thousands, others think much more. The official census showed a number of 250,000 people, but many are sure that these figures were underestimated in order to hide the scale of the problem. People who encounter this place for the first time involuntarily ask themselves how the locals manage to survive. After all, there is nowhere to grow food, no trees, nowhere to collect firewood. Life here is really hard. These people survive in almost unsuitable conditions. The birth rate here is very high. One man can have 3 or 4 wives, and he has children from each, 5 to 7 children from just one woman. The country is very rich in natural resources, but it is more profitable to sell these natural resources abroad. There they pay more for them than the local poor population. They hardly share their wealth with the people here. This is how Lagos, the capital of Nigeria, arose. This is one of the fastest growing megacities in the world. It also occupies a leading position in terms of the size of its slums. And these slums have their own name, Makoko, and unofficially, many call them Black Venice. The minimal number of teachers and police officers per capita make the Nigerian slums a very unenviable place. There is no need to even talk about the level of medical care. Add to this the terrible unsanitary conditions, and perhaps then you will understand why there are very few old people here. If you look closely, there are almost no old people in the country. The vast majority of people die at a relatively young age, many from HIV, human immunodeficiency viruses, others from malaria, hepatitis, meningitis, typhoid fever, intestinal infections, and so on. All this does not receive proper treatment and leads to the fact that in the slums only 5% of the population survives to 60 years. Once there was a small fishing village here. It supplied seafood to the whole of Lagos, but now the water near the coast is heavily polluted and is no longer suitable for fishing. However, if you sail away from the city, you can catch a few fish if you are lucky. And so fishing is the main occupation of the residents of the water slums. The rest sail to Lagos every day to earn money. The water here gives off a foul smell. A thick layer of sewage collects around the piles of hundreds of illegal shacks. According to statistics, each of the floating houses is home to an average of 6 to 10 people. Migrant workers from all over West Africa flock here. Many residents do not even own houses, but only rent them. Wooden boats remain the main means of transportation for local residents. Every family here has one, and children come up with even more interesting means of transportation. Boats are also used for fishing and serve as trading points, where women sell food, water and household goods. There are even floating schools built from plastic barrels. Sometimes they are destroyed by storms, and children in some areas are left without new education for several years. And some parents can afford to send their children to neighboring areas to other overcrowded floating schools. The government does not provide free water to the residents of Makoko. The only way to get drinking water is to buy it from vendors who get it from wells. All waste and sewage are released directly into the ocean, and then the children splash in this water. Nevertheless, even in such a place, people try to somehow entertain themselves. In houses where there is electricity, you can find LCD TVs and even new generation PlayStation 2 consoles, at least, new to them. There are hairdressers and even a small cafe. And these slums have one big advantage, a fairly low crime rate compared to the rest of Lagos. Also, there are no utility bills here, because they simply do not exist. These services. Many times, the Nigerian authorities try to demolish these slums, citing the environmental threat they pose, but in return, the government did not offer residents houses on land, and therefore, when the demolition began, the residents rebelled, which is why the authorities retreated. Horrible unemployment means that even children are taught to work hard from an early age. Almost a third of Nigerians are illiterate. Only a few lucky ones have the will to save up for one-way tickets to Europe, where they will earn many times more than they would at home, working at the lowest paid jobs. The spectacularity of this place is also given by the 10-kilometer bridge in its background, and the modern buildings in the distance create a truly surreal picture. Let's move on to the next unusual city. In front of you is El Ahmadiyya, a city as if drawn in Photoshop, but it is reality. It is located in Iraqi Kurdistan, and just one look at it immediately understands that this is a fairly old city, built at a time when height was of strategic importance. Almedia is located on a flat mountain top at an altitude of 1,400 meters. Although living in houses on the edge of a cliff can be scary, but their windows offer a stunning view of the valley. The city was founded as early as the 3rd millennium BC and since then has not grown in size at all for obvious reasons. There is simply nowhere to grow. The buildings do not have levitation, and therefore it has remained a kilometer long and 500 meters wide as it was thousands of years ago. For a long time, access to the town was possible only through a narrow staircase passage carved into the stones. Now a good road has been built. The city was conceived as an impregnable fortress, and therefore different peoples and states of the region have always tried to take possession of this excellent stronghold. Almedia is a multinational and multi-religious city. Muslims live well with Christians here. The population is about 8 to 11,000 people. There is everything you need for a normal life: shops, restaurants, police and other services. However, due to the impossibility of population growth due to the limited territory, which does not allow the construction of new houses, the natives are often forced to move from the city. Basically, locals earn money from agriculture and a little from tourism. Residents of Almedia are trying to register the city in the UNESCO World Heritage Register in order to attract more tourists. The next unusual city on our list is La Rinconada. It also looks very fantastic, like from some movie. This city lost in the mountains is called by many people Hell on Earth. It is located in Peru on an extinct volcano, and this city is not just located high above sea level, it ranks first in the world in this respect. It is the highest city on planet Earth, more than 5 kilometers above sea level. It is the same as if the city was located on Mount Elbrus. Just imagine what kind of oxygen starvation the local population must have, because the atmosphere at such altitudes is very rarefied. This significantly affects life expectancy. However, oxygen starvation, although one of the main problems of this city, is far from the only one. The climate here is harsh. There is a lot of rain in the summer and dry in the winter, and the average annual temperature is only 1 degree Celsius. More than 30,000 people live in these unfriendly conditions. In fact, 30,000 were according to estimates in 2009. Since then the population has increased significantly. But what attracts people here? The answer is wages. This is a mining town, and there are many gold deposits here, and therefore the gold rush brought here many workers who can earn as much as $200 a month. It does not sound like much, but for this country the salary is not small, and people are ready to endure difficult working conditions, a harsh climate and lack of comfort for it. The lack of normal control from the government made mining chaotic. There is no administration in the city. Anarchy reigns. Almost all mining companies working here do it informally. There is no need to talk about safety regulations here, so miners constantly risk their lives, and there are many precedents here. Gold mining is carried out by outdated means. Precious metals are extracted from or using mercury, which is why this toxic metal has poisoned the local soil, water and air. This leads to a large number of patients who are poisoned by this mercury. As a result, due to oxygen starvation, mercury poisoning, harsh living and working conditions, people here live to 50 years on average. This is 20 years less than the national average. Everything is aggravated by the off-scale crime rate. There is a police force here, but officers only come here on short business trips. The main entertainment of the locals is drunkenness. Prostitution is widespread, even among miners. It is better not to go to brothels and clubs. They are flooded with drunken marginals spending money so hard earned in the mines. All this leads to the fact that venereal diseases, including HIV, reign in the city. From the outside, the city looks quite atmospheric, but as soon as you move in, there will be no limit to disappointment. People live in wretched shacks covered with metal sheets. All the slopes are strewn with them. Garbage is everywhere. If you turn even a little from the central streets, a foul smell can meet you in any part of the city. Poorly developed sewage system, which is why slops are often dumped directly into the street. Most of the buildings are not heated, but they have electricity, and some even have the internet. According to doctors, about 30 people die in mines every year due to accidents, and another 70 people die due to crime. And the mercury pollution of the city and its altitude lead to blood clots, kidney failure, problems with the nervous system, and so on. Live here for a few years, and chronic diseases are guaranteed. Many women suffer from urinary tract infections, and all because of problems with the sewage system. By the way, the salary of $200, which I mentioned earlier, is not available to everyone here. Many do not receive anything at all, since a very interesting system is widespread here. in which workers work for free for a month, on the last day of which the company gives them the right to take as much ore as they can carry themselves, and the chance that the stones that the worker takes away will contain gold is low. It will be even more difficult for him to sell what he found for an adequate price. Local buyers do nothing but dump prices as much as possible, while the men of the city toil in the mines. Their wives sift through the waste rock in the hope of finding at least a grain of gold that the gold mining company missed, and often children are involved in this work. What's more, children even worked in the mines here at one time. Today, the city's mines allegedly produce about 10 tons of gold annually. It is unlikely that these figures can be trusted due to the thriving black market. The government ignores the lawlessness and anarchy that is happening here. The city is ruled by gold mining companies that do not particularly care about improving the working conditions of the miners and improving the city's life. I think now you understand why this city is called Hell on Earth. Despite all the hopelessness that is happening in the city, there is no end to those who want to live and work here, because this is perhaps their only chance to earn at least some significant money. Let's move on to the next unusual settlement. Before you is Yongjin, the narrowest city in the world. These shots, which show the city from a bird's eye view, quickly went viral online. Some even thought it was computer graphics. People are wondering why anyone would want to live in such a narrow settlement when there are much more suitable places in China. Well, why not live in such an atmospheric place that seems to have come from a fantasy? The city cannot grow in width. It is hindered by mountains. At its narrowest point, Yongjin is only 30 meters wide, and the widest part of the city is about 300 meters. In addition to its extreme narrowness, the city has another peculiarity. Since land is a valuable commodity in this area, most of the apartment buildings are located right on the riverbank. They are built on high thin piles to protect people's homes from possible flooding in the event of rising water levels. The city is located between the steep mountains of the Chinese province of Yunnan, and about 40,000 people live here. Developed infrastructure and roads laid through a 2-kilometer tunnel cut through the mountains support life in the city. Tourists also contribute to the city's economy, coming here to personally see these unrealistic views, as if from a parallel universe. Although until recently there were not so many tourists, but the promotion on the internet has improved the situation. It is strange, but there are few bridges here, although it is difficult to imagine a city that needs them more. The climate here is mild. There is no cold winter. It is warm almost all year round, and it often rains. Thanks to this, many locals earn money by growing rice. The rest of the residents work on the railway or are engaged in servicing the tourism industry. Nevertheless, the city cannot be called prosperous all because of its inaccessibility, despite the presence of the railway. In addition, new permanent residents almost never move here, not understanding why they should live in such a cramped place, and even dangerous because of frequent floods. Because of them, people have died here. During the flood, the river rises so high that it can flood not only the lower floors. At the same time, the piles on which the houses stand not only do not save, but can also collapse. The natives do not even think about leaving here. Their ancestors lived in these places hundreds of years ago. They have long been accustomed. Life in the narrowest city in the world, although not the most comfortable, is certainly atmospheric. The views here are stunning. I would like to hope that this place will not be abandoned over time. Next we have another Chinese city, Chongqing. This is the largest metropolis in the world, which, as they joke on the internet, no one knows about. There is more truth in this joke. Despite the status of the largest settlement on the planet, almost no one outside China really knows about it, although you have probably seen footage from it. For example, these, where trains run through the city buildings. These shots have become very popular on the internet, and it also has one of the most complex transport interchanges in the world. The city is growing at an indecent rate. The pace of construction is off the charts, and the city's glamorization is the size of Austria. Everything old here is quickly torn down, and new things are built at an incredible speed. Entire old neighborhoods can disappear in a day, and be replaced very quickly, thanks to a huge network of multi-level roads and countless skyscrapers. Chongqing looks like a city from the future. From some angles, it's downright cyberpunk. While Hollywood is filming blockbusters about cities of the future, the Chinese are building them right now. In Chongqing, two rivers of different colors meet, and the border between them is often clearly visible. There is an indecent number of grandiose bridges on these rivers, including the longest arch bridge in the world. In another city, they would become its main attraction, but here you can hardly even notice them against the background of everything else. The Chongqing subway is a separate story. There are as many as 200 stations in this city. One of them, as I already mentioned, is located in a residential building, occupying the 6th through 8th floors. Monorail trains run right through this building, without causing any discomfort to the residents of the building, as noise-reducing materials were used during the construction of the station. This cyberpunk station was built due to an acute shortage of space in a densely populated part of the city. Due to the lack of space, even more cyberpunk parking lots can be seen in this city. Remember the cool parking station in the movie Fast and Furious 3 Tokyo Drift? Well, here it is implemented even cooler. How do you like this? For example, the driver drives onto the platform and leaves the car, after which the platform with the car rises to certain angles and moves to the side. Well, in 2019, a smart parking tower for 397 cars appeared. There you can park your car in just a minute by scanning a QR code. The roads here are also made wisely. Despite one of the most complex transport interchanges in the world, consisting of 20 stacks located on 5 levels, you will not have problems choosing the right direction, and if you get lost, you can go back, driving a maximum of a kilometer until you find the right turn. The number of residents in Chongqing goes off the scale of all norms of decency, as many as 32 million people officially. But this is according to the 2009 census. According to rough estimates, the population has grown to 40 million since then. This is more than the entire population of Canada. Life is in full swing. What can't be said about the next city called Colma, which is located in the USA near San Francisco? This is one of the most unusual cities in the world. 73% of the city's territory is a cemetery. For every 1,000 dead people, there is one living person, and this is not an increase. Wherever you look, there are graves everywhere. That is why this city is also called the City of the Dead. Everything is strewn with slabs. A total of 1.5 million people are buried here. But this city is quiet and peaceful. That is why this city has another name, the City of Silence. The huge number of dead people here is quite easy to explain. The fact is that burying people in San Francisco is too expensive, and therefore the authorities banned it. Which is why 100 years ago 150,000 bodies in the San Francisco cemetery were transported and reburied here. Since then, many of the dead in San Francisco have been buried here. The place is quite cinematic, so various films were shot here. Today, the city has 1,500 above-ground residents and 1.5 million underground. But there is a real underground city in which people live. It is called Cupertinian, located in the center of the Australian desert. Concurrently, it is the world capital of opals. Here are 30% of the world's deposits of these stones, and 97% of all world opal mining occurs here. The entire infrastructure of the city is buried in the ground: hotels, shops, houses, schools, 3 churches, museums, bars, restaurants, libraries, and everything else. There is even an underground cemetery. All this is located at a depth of several meters of earth, and sometimes tens of meters. The fact is that on the surface of the desert it is hellishly hot, up to 45 degrees, and before there were no air conditioners. It was unrealistic to cool the house, and therefore it was decided to build a city underground, and all for the sake of opal mining. As a result, a city like in the films about the apocalypse was obtained. Even today, the city's residents prefer to go up to the hot surface as little as possible. By the way, the name of the Sobrajensky Cuperpedia is translated as the white man's hole. The city's residents' houses are large caves consisting of a living room, kitchen, bathroom, and 4 bedrooms. People tried to dig their houses in such a way that the exit was not only to the street, but also directly to a multi-kilometer mine where opals were mined, which is extremely convenient. Underground houses always remain relatively cool, with a constant temperature of 23 degrees, while in houses on the surface it can reach 40. And these houses are equipped with all the means of comfort: sewerage, electricity, running water, and the internet. Houses with underground pools. The only downside to underground houses is the lack of windows. With the exception of those houses built on slopes, it is not surprising that this city is often used as a backdrop for films. For example, the Crazy MAKS 3 and The Black Hole, The Soaker, were filmed here, and there are often spectacular sandstorms here. There is an assumption that the colonization of Mars will be carried out in the same way as the construction of Cupertini. They even plan to hold exercises here before the flight to the Red Planet. Although electricity in this city is produced by solar panels, it is extremely cheap here, because this is a desert with a constantly shining sun. Another funny thing is that if you buy a plot of land here to dig a house for yourself, you can accidentally get rich. For example, when they were drilling a place for a hotel, opals worth $360,000 were found. The population of the city is small, only a couple of thousand people, and recently foreign buildings began to appear in Cupertino, thanks to the air conditioning. However, most of the residents spend most of their time underground. This unusual place attracts tourists from all over the world, because its economy is strongly tied to it, and tourism Dasha began to bring in as much money as opal mining. The city of Setenil de las Vegas in Spain is very similar to Cupertino, which is cut into a rock, which looks very impressive. It is somewhat reminiscent of the city on the mountain from The Lord of the Rings. The basalt rock serves as the roof and walls of the houses, on the slope of which the village is located. And this old city in Alaska, in which almost the entire population lives in one building. But in this building, in addition to residential apartments, there is absolutely everything: a supermarket, a hospital, a police station, a church, a post office, and other necessary things, and all under one roof. Wherever you want to go, you do not need to leave the building, and you will not want to, since the local climate is quite harsh. In winter, winds often hit with speeds reaching 100 kilometers per hour, but there is no sun from November to February. One of the advantages of the city is the extremely low crime rate, because all the locals know each other by sight, and it would be difficult to hide if something happened, since the only way out of the city is a tunnel cut through the mountain. In conditions of isolation, neighbors here try to be friends as closely as possible, since in case of any problems, help from the mainland may not arrive on time. School children often do their homework in teachers' apartments. You can communicate with the outside world via the internet. Now there are few people left in the city, just over 200 people, but it still has the status of a city. The government forgot about it, did not repair the buildings damaged by the earthquake, although it promised. Because of this, many left, and only recently did investments come here again. The main place of work in the city is the port, which receives ships with tourists sailing to admire this unusual place and the beautiful nature here. That's all. Don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, subscribe to our channel.